Today we're going to start talking about creating our own GUI applications, and this is really a fun part of Java. So long time ago, everything was from command line. You would have these black windows and you would type everything. You wanted to copy files, you wanted to read the contents of files, you would use the command window to do that. Everything is graphical. You know, you want to copy a file, you open up your Windows Explorer and you copy a file from there. You right click and you rename the file. So we use the GUI for everything. So GUI just stands for Graphical User Interface. And Java, like many other languages, allow you to do graphical user interfaces. So this is what we're going to be learning how to do in this chapter. Now, this GUI might be able to accept user input from a mouse, like a user clicking on some buttons. Or from the keyboard, you know, it might have a text box for you to type in information, like when you go on the website and it asks you to enter your username and password, you're using the keyboard. And so when you are designing a GUI, you're going to have a window or a bunch of windows. And these windows basically consist of components that allow the user to enter data, to present data for the user to see, you know, information that's being shown on your GUI screen, and allow interaction, you know, ask for input, give you something back. And so we are going to learn how to do all that. Now, these GUI components have names. So it can be, you know, you can have a text field that you can type in. You can have static text that doesn't change. We call that a label. So this is a label, this is a text field. You can have a combo box. A combo box is just a drop-down menu. You can have a checkbox, you can have a slider, you can have some radio buttons, you can have a list you know, a static list of text. You can have buttons. Okay, so these are all different components. Now we're not going to learn how to create all of those, but once you know how to create a few, it's easy for you to look up the Java documentation and create another component. Now, Java, the GUI uses a foundation class called the Java Foundation classes, the JFC, to create those GUI applications. And there are several components. So there's the auth component, swing, there's some accessibility functionality, there's Java 2D, and now there's also Java FX. So these are all part of the JVC, the Java Foundation classes. And it basically a set of classes that allow you to do GUI GUI development. Now, we're not going to talk about all of them, but we're going to be using auth and swing in this course. So auth is the basic that you need to start off with. It contains the classes that draw the graphics and create the graphical user interface. So we are going to be using the auth framework underneath the swing. Now, the auth is not actually drawing the user interface components on the screen, but the auth, the purpose of it is actually to communicate with your hardware on your computer. And so when you are talking, when you're using the auth framework, because you are talking to the operating system's own classes, you know, how do you draw a window in, like if I want to draw a window and I want it to have the same colors that, you know, someone chose for their window, like, you know, for example, here, my windows, you know, every application, like this application has a purple window, NetBeans has a gray one, PowerPoint has a certain color, you know, this one has a certain feel. Some of these come from the operating system. So if someone decided that they want their windows to be black and their text to be white, you want your Java application to kind of be the same. And so the auth framework, what the auth framework does, it communicates with your operating system when it needs to do the drawing. It's not doing the drawing itself, but it's the layer that actually communicates with your operating system to draw the windows the way your operating system wants them to be. Okay, so when you use the auth framework, the advantage is that the window that you draw is going to look consistent with other applications on the same system. So if I chose my color scheme to be, you know, red and blue, then whatever I write also show up with red and blue. If someone else decided that their scheme is, you know, black and white, their application is also going to be black and white. So this is the advantage of using the OT framework, is that it gives you the same look and feel as other applications running on your operating system. Okay, so why is this not nice? Sometimes is that it's because, you know, if I have two people sitting on two laptops working and running the same application, they might get different results. Their windows might look different because the two people that are running my application have different operating system settings. So it's nice in that it looks, it has a look and feel that's similar to other applications running on your system. But, you know, you might have some unexpected behavior because it is going to look different depending on how other people have it on their system. Okay, so the OT was the first framework that existed in Java, and everything, you know, with over time, programming languages evolve. And so the OT framework was set to be heavyweight. It's heavyweight because it is really tied to the native peer. It is tied to the operating system. So what they did was after the OT, they said, okay, let's introduce Swing. And Swing came like really early, Java 2. You know, right now we're using Java 9 or 12 when you installed Java on your computer. But Swing was introduced early on in Java 2. Swing does rely on the OT framework underneath, but it came and the purpose of it was to kind of try to lessen relying on the operating system. So we say that it's a lightweight or it has lightweight components because it's not tied heavily to the operating system. So Swing actually draws most of its own components. OT didn't draw them. It relied on the operating system. Swing actually draws most of its components, and because it's drawing its own components, you know, if you run a Swing application on any computer, if you have two different people sitting, each one running a Swing application, most probably they will both have the same application, the same look and feel of the application. So it's predictable depending on where you're running. You know, it's going to look consistent and predictable regardless of where you're running, which operating system you're running it on. So that was nice about Swing, is that there was this predictability that you know what the application is going to look like regardless of the operating system that it was on. This was not true with the OT framework. The other thing that was nice about the Swing components was that they can be extended. You can inherit from them, and we're going to actually see that today. So how do we start doing GUI applications? There are two classes that we will need to, two packages that we will need to import, Swing and OT. Swing, we kind of used it before when we used JOption pane. So it's in javax.swing, and the OT is just java.OT. So these two are the ones that we are going to be importing. Notice that Swing has javax, but the OT is just Java. So that's the first thing we need to do. Go and import these two in our NetBeans. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to import both. So import java.OT and everything in there. And everything in there. So that's the first thing that we need to do. Now, let's start understanding how the GUI is constructed. So let's just come here to a picture. So when I want to draw a window, this window is basically in Java, we call it a frame. And this frame has a couple things. It has a border around it. Okay. It has a title bar. And this title bar consists of a few things. It has this little icon here. It has the minimize, the maximize, and the close. So all windows, you know, if you look at Google Chrome or PowerPoint or NetBeans, they all have these. So we call these the decorations. Okay, so this title bar with those buttons, we call those the decorations. So anytime you're going to create a frame or a window in Java, you're going to get that by default. When you're creating this window in Java, you want to choose an appropriate size for it. Now we're going to learn later how we can bypass the size and you know, have it be like kind of auto fit. But for now, what we want to do is we want to create a window. We're going to have to choose a size for it. We're going to have to choose a nice window, a nice title for it. And we're going to kind of choose what we want to do when this X is closed, because there are different behaviors, and we'll see the different behaviors in a minute. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a JFrame. So JFrame is the class that allows you to create this window. And the constructor doesn't take anything, so you can just say JFrame, like window equal new JFrame. We're going to set a title to this JFrame. We're going to set a size. We're going to set the default close operation, what we want to happen when someone clicks the X. And the last thing that you really need to do is set the window to be visible. If you don't set it to be visible, it doesn't show up. Now, when you're setting the width and height of the window, you can put them as numbers in the set size. But what's a nice thing to do is make those sizes final and make them, at the top as global constants, so that if you want to change the size, you don't have to dig down into the code. You can do it, at the top of your class. So let's go and do that. Let's create a window. Okay. So I'm going to come here to my class, and I'm going to create my JFrame window equal new JFrame. And we said there are 4 things we're going to do. We're going to give it a title. So, test window. We're going to give it a size. And let's just make it 250. And let's make it 500. We're going to set the close operation. And this one, I always have to just look it up. I know it starts with set, and it's the set default close operation. This one is always confusing to me. And here, there are some static constants in JFrame that we can use. And if I just say JFrame dot, the options are there. So there's exit on close, there's hide on close. What else? So there's hide on close, exit on close. Oh, there they are. Dispose on close and do nothing on close. And we're not going to try that, but we'll just say exit on close. And the last thing we're going to do is say window dot set visible, and we're going to make it true. And I'm going to here just have a system dot out dot println done. So let's run this and see what happens. So it came and it created a window for me. Oops. Now it's really small, so let's make it a little wider. So let's make it actually really wide. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so this is my window. Notice that after the window got created and it was visible, this println happened. Okay, so the window is open and the printing happens. So after the window is created and it's made visible, the code that's underneath is going to start executing. In general, when you're doing a GUI application, you don't start using system.out. You can use system.out for debugging purposes, but you're not going to be interacting with the user system.out, system.in. You're going to be interacting with the user only through the GUI. So if you want to pop up an error message, it should be a GUI window that pops up. If you want to ask the user for something, it should be done through the GUI. If I here, right when I clicked X, it said, build successful, it ended. Now, if I forget the set visible and I try opening it and I try running this code, it happens. It didn't become visible, and so it felt like there was nothing to do, and so the application ended immediately. So you really need the set visible, otherwise it's not going to work. Let's try different operations for closing. Okay. So here, what I'm going to do, instead of JFrame exit on close, I'm going to say do nothing on close. Okay, so let's try the do nothing on close. So there's my window, and I try clicking X and nothing is happening. So if you have like a window that you want to make sure that doesn't go away until you want it to go away, you can say do nothing and close. So this will disable the window from having people close it. So that's one thing we can do. Let's try another thing. The dispose on close. Okay, and this one, it made the window go away. After a while, it exited, so it's kind of the same as exiting. Now, if I had more than one window, then the dispose on close would act differently. So if I have two windows that I'm creating, I can have one of them be dispose on close, which means just close this window, don't close the application. This might be good for a window like the help. You know, if you have a button that pops up a help, when you click X on the help, you don't want to exit the whole application. You just want to close this window. So dispose on close does that. It just closes that one window. And let's try the last option. So we did the dispose, the do nothing, the exit, hide on close. Okay. And so if I run this and I click X, it's hidden and my application is still running. Now, where did it go? It's hidden. Can't find it. It's gone. So this is not really a good one that you want to use, okay? At least for our small applications. So the ones that we really will probably be using is the exit when we have a window, only an application that consists only of one window, or if you have a window that's popping up another window, we'll use the dispose on close. So those are the two most common ones. Okay, let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. Now the window size is in pixels. Okay, so just know that it's in pixels. It's not how many characters that you can write or anything. And we talked about the set default close operation. Okay. Now, what I just did here was I created a JFrame inside my main. In GUI applications, usually you don't just create one window. You have a lot of windows, and there might be information that you're storing in these windows. They're kind of like classes that store information. So what we want to do is learn how to create a class that actually extends from JFrame. So instead of creating my window in main, what I want to do is I want to create a file. I want to create my own class that extends JFrame. So let's go and let's create a new window. I'm just going to say my window. And let me import, add my import lines, import java.auth and javax.swing. And here I'm going to make my window extends JFrame. Now I can have things here, like for example, let's say the title is something that I'm going to be storing here. So I can have my constructor say here title equal to no title. So public my window, I can have it take nothing as input, or I can have another one that actually takes a title. So when you're creating those, so let's have this one called this with no title. So we don't want to write many constructors. We want them all to call each other. So this one's going to call this constructor with no title. But I can have it, you know, I can write different constructors and they can take information from main or whoever is calling them. So the things that we did in main for the last code, so the 4 things that we did here in main for my window, setting the title, size, default, and visible, we need to also do them here. And where we do them is in the constructor. Now, sometimes you might not remember the methods. So I know set size, for example, I can say 1,500. If I don't remember like the default one, what I can do is use this. So remember, this is a way to refer to yourself. So if you don't remember the methods, you can say this dot, and then you'll get them. So here I'll say set default close operation to jframe dot exit on close, for example, and this dot set visible. So that visible is the last thing we need to do. And so we have the size, that we need the title. So this dot set title to the title that passed in. I don't have to put this, but this is a way that you can get to the methods if you forget them, especially the set default close operation. That one's always hard to remember. But you can call this on it. Now I constructed a window. So this is going to actually show the window because I made it visible. It's going to show. So how do I call this class? Well, in my main, what I can do is I can, instead of creating my JFrame like this, I can just come and say my window x equal to new, my window, and this is, let's say, first Java application. So this is the title that I want to show. And oops, it's not in the same package here, so let's drag it down. 3-factor. Okay. And let's run it. And now it popped up that window with the size and the first Java application. We can have the constructor also take the width and height, for example. So I can say height and width. Oops, let's make it 1,000. 500. Okay, so I can modify it also to take height and width. And so here it can take the height and width. So you can write as many constructors as you want, and you can make them, you know, whatever. So if someone doesn't tell me, it's just going to be 100, 200. Okay. So this is how you can create your window. Now, all we did was learn how to create a window. Now we want to add some components to it. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we can add some components, like we can add a label, we can add a text field, and we can add a button. So let's add all those. They all start with the word J. So label, if you want to add a label, it's a J label. The text field is a J text field. The button is J button. And I'm going to show you how to add them. But first we need to create those constructors. The J label only takes the label that you want. The text field is how long it is, and the button has a name. So let's try adding some components to our window. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to start creating some labels. So, sorry, some components. So J label, K equal new, J label, and enter kilometers here. Kilometers. And I'll do the text field. Call this my label. Field. And we're going to make it size 10, and we're going to play with these numbers until they look right. And then J button equal new J button, and the button we want it to say calculate. Now, this doesn't do anything, so let's try it. My window doesn't have anything on it. I need to add them to the window, and the way we add them to the window is that we have to create a panel. So the JFrame, okay, is kind of like background. It has the menu bar at the top, which has the title, and then it has a title, it has a content pane. And we need to create this content pane before we can add components. So what we need to do is create a J panel, and then all these components that we created, we're going to add them to the panel, and then add the panel to the JFrame. So what I'm going to do, the first thing is we need to create a J panel. So J panel equal to new J panel. That's the first thing we need to do. Then we create our components, which we already did. Now those components, components. Now we created those components. We're going to add them to the J panel. So add components to the J panel. So we go to our panel and say add my label panel, add text panel, add button. And then the final step is to add the panel to the J-frame. And the J-frame has a method add, okay, that we can use. So I can use this dot, or I can just say add, because I'm in the constructor. So I'm calling the add on myself, and I'm going to add the panel. And let's run it and see what it looks like now. And it didn't get added because I made a mistake. I made it visible before I fixed everything. So the set visible call actually needs to come after everything happens. So the set visible needs to be the last call. Last call set visible. Otherwise, you're making it visible before you've added your components. So let's try it again. And now it has everything in there. Now it's, of course, it's huge. And, you know, we need to change the size, but this is how we can get a basic GUI window up. So we've talked about the panel, and we've talked here. So here this panel is a container that holds a GUI components that we've created. We cannot display a panel by itself. We have to go through the J-frame. And so the main purpose of a panel is just to organize different components together. Now, this J-frame that we created, it consisted of a J panel inside of it. The J panel had a J button, it had a J label, and it also had a J text field. So those are classes that you can, objects that you can add to your J panel. If you were to look at Java, the inheritance data structure, you'll see that the J-frame is a class that exists. J panel extends from J-frame, J button and J label extend from J panel. You don't really need to know that, but it's there for your reference. You know, what we did right now was we added everything into the constructor, and this doesn't really look good. The constructor should not have all the GUI details like this. So one suggestion for organization is creating a method called build panel or anything, and just putting all your building inside of this method and then just calling this method. So a better way to have done the code was to create a build panel method, create your J panel, add all your components to it, and just call that in the constructor. So let's go and fix our code to look better by doing that. So here in my constructor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all the code that was creating the panel. So all this code that was here, I'm going to take it out. I'm going to replace it with a build panel method that I'm going to write. So I'm going to come here now and add my method, public void build panel. And I'm going to add everything to it. Okay. And this gives me the same behavior, but it makes it a little bit cleaner because your constructors shouldn't be, you know, that big. Other things that you can do is set background and foreground colors. Now, to do that, we need to import java.auth.color, but for us, we don't have to do it because when we did our import statements, we just said import everything in the auth class. But those colors exist under auth in a class called color, and there are a bunch of colors that you can use. And so you can go to any of those the panel or the components, because remember, all the components extend from JPanel eventually, and you can set background and set foreground colors. So let's go and just set some colors on the things that we wrote. So I'm going to go to the panel, and let's make the panel. Oops. Let's set the background color to yellow. Okay. And let's go to our label. Let's go to our label here, my label, and say set foreground color to green. Let's try green. And there's like lowercase and uppercase green. The text, for example, I can say set background to color dot, let's say blue. And I can also set the foreground color, text dot set foreground color to, let's say, white. I'm going to show you what that's going to look like in a minute. It's not going to look really beautiful, but the purpose is just to show you how those methods work. So the foreground color to, okay, let's do yellow, and button dot set background color. So my background is yellow. Here my button, I set the background for it to black and the foreground to yellow. So the foreground is going to be the color of the text. The same for the text field. I set it to blue, and then my writing now is going to be white. And then here the foreground color is green for the label. So you can play with colors also to make your GUI a little bit more colorful. So for today's classwork, what you're going to do is just practice creating a simple GUI. You're going to create your GUI, make sure that you create your own class that extends from JFrame, and then you're going to, add the colors and text fields and everything as it indicates here. And you're going to be using this in 17.2. So in the next classwork, you're going to learn how to actually implement the buttons that we are, writing code for, that we're creating the GUI for today.